So I ended the last video talking about how motivation is one concept or one set of behaviors that we can think about in terms of biological, psychological, and social perspectives. Intelligence is another one like that. Okay, so first of all, what is intelligence? It's the ability to learn from experience, solve problems, and use our knowledge to adapt to new situations. In other words, it's our ability to figure things out and to be adaptive because of what we know from what's happened to us before. Your book talks about how there's some perspectives that think it's pretty well biological and physiological in the brain and based on genetics, but there are also some social and some psychological influences. But we need to go a little bit deeper in there to say, what is it? Is it one general ability or several? The movie 187 gives us some interesting examples and characters that kind of can make us think about, are they intelligent? From one perspective, Spearman says it's just this one general intelligence. We can have all these little pieces that fit in the factor analysis thing, little pieces in the puzzle, but it's one big ability. On the other hand, some people say no, there are different focuses here. Gardner says there are 8 different areas in which we can demonstrate intelligence. Sternberg says 8 might be a little much, maybe it's 3. But the idea of the different abilities is that we have different areas we can display our problem solving, display our adaptability. And so as you read through the material in the textbook, you can kind of think about, okay, do I see this as more one general, or do I think about the several abilities idea, or do I agree with the several abilities idea? And then, does that help me understand these characters any better? Another perspective on intelligence is that of emotional intelligence, the ability to perceive, understand, manage, and use emotions. Okay, so the idea here is, okay, for one, are we really able to recognize that people are having an emotional experience or I'm having an emotional experience? And do we understand where that would come from? Can we help reduce it in some way? And can I use those emotions? And sometimes it sounds a little evil, like can I use their emotions? But you know, can we bring about that arousal that comes with emotions, that behavior and that thinking and cognition? Can we use that in a way that helps us get from point A to point B? So the coach in 187 is one particular example we could think about in terms of, okay, is he displaying emotional intelligence? Is he perceiving, understanding, managing, and using emotions? And okay, while he's technically a character, the personification of RJ in Over the Hedge can help us think a lot about, okay, is he emotionally intelligent? So one question is though, okay, if it's emotional intelligence, if it's one ability, if it's multiple abilities, how do we know how much, what quantity this person has? So we need to think about assessing intelligence. In other words, assessing a person's mental aptitudes so that we can compare them with others in some sort of a numerical, quantifiable way. And historically, we've used this idea of an intelligence quotient or IQ, which is a person's mental age, how well they can do on these assessments, divided by their chronological age. To really have a solid, really useful assessment, though, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be valid, it needs to be standardized. And so, in terms of thinking like a scholarly psychologist or just thinking in a scholarly way, I want you to think about the criteria for acceptable testing. That's going to help shed some light on our understanding of the characters, particularly the Seymour's character in 187. Those assessments tend to reveal or can reveal different extremes, from the mentally retarded to the really high intelligence. Our book talks about mentally retarded is generally regarded as IQ of 70 or less, with decreasing functionality with decreasing IQ levels. That's what we'll see and think about related to Seymour's character in 187. High intelligence is IQ over 135. And as we think about that, in general, we can just think about, okay, what's the stereotypes here of these of individuals in this category versus the reality of it. Okay, so with intelligence, we come to the end of the different perspectives we can use to consider behavior in these movies. Of course, the concepts that you've used in the first act, you might see ideas in this act. And as you look at the concepts in this act, you might think about, whoa, that so explains that character. So, with that in mind, have fun, and I'll look forward to hearing what you think about the movies.